Right, guys, welcome back. I was trying to build this patch today on the live stream, the Patreon live stream, but we had a few technical issues right at the end of the stream, so I thought it would be cool to come back and just rebuild it from scratch. Now, I want to do this in under 10 minutes because it's meant to be a very quick, very fun patch. And the aim of this patch is very simple. I want to be able to play polyphonic keyboard, like 4 notes of keyboard, and I want to have the patch animate for me in terms of the timing. All right, and later on, if we do more fancy stuff, the timbre and stuff, but mainly the timing. I want to animate the timing. Now, in a modular system, of course, again, to reiterate, you can split pitch information and timing information into two completely separate systems, and this is a great example of that. All right. Let's start by just building up the core oscillators, putting the envelopes on. We're going to get them all sitting together. It's not going to sound very good because it's all in the same pitch. And then when I play the keys, you'll hear where I've been heading with this whole thing. All right, so first thing we've got Platts. It's a very cool FM oscillator. I've used it in green 3, the third green mode, which is FM. And I've taken away all the harmonics, the morph, and the timbre, right? The pitch is default, so it's in C. By default, and that just means whatever key I play, it'll be true to that key. And it's, yeah, I've taken away all the harmonics, etc., etc. And what it basically is a sine wave. And you can see that on the scope that it's very pure tone, very sine wavy. All right. Now I'm going to create now a VCA, and I'm going to plug that into the VCA, and then I'm going to create a VCF, a voltage controlled filter, and I'm going to plug the VCA's output to the input of the filter. All right, and then I'm going to again connect it in here. It's still flowing because the VCA is not closing. If that VCA closes, it'll interrupt the flow. Now what I want to do, all right, with this constant tone is I want to create an ADSR envelope which is going to open and close this VCA, and I'm going to give this ADSR envelope a trigger, a gate, from a random source. Now in this case, it's going to be the Turing machine. So you can see that I have my clock over here, and I'm just checking the layout of everything on the screen. I have the clock over here, and I've got a ×4 clock, which is 1/16, and it's coming into the Turing machine. Much more effective, I find, the Turing machine, especially if you're using it for gates, if it gets a 1/16 clock. All right. Now, as soon as that runs, you can see that it's producing a whole bunch of random gate outputs. These are AND gates, more common frequent gates, and these are slightly less common gates. They're called OR gates. All right, so I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to have that trigger the gate on the envelope, and I'm going to have the envelope open up the VCA. All right, and now you hear that it's only when the Turing machine sends a random gate that this ADSR is opening. Now, based on the sort of length of the envelope, I can give it like a lot of release and sustain and have it almost be legato, or a more legato sound, or I can have it very staccato. Okay. Now, in this case, I'm actually looking for now a little bit more legato. And last thing I want to do is just duplicate this envelope, because even though there are no harmonics right now it's a pure tone, it's a sine wave. Again, as you can see on the scope, as you could see on the scope when it was plugged in, it's just let's just duplicate that from the scope. You can see it's a sine wave. There's no overtones to speak of right now, but later on, if we add overtones, I'm going to want to filter everything, a filter envelope. So I'm going to the same gate, same random gate from the Turing machine that is triggering the envelope, which is opening the VCA, is also going to trigger a second envelope, and that envelope is going to look a bit different, slightly shorter, and it is going to come in to the modulation port for filter cutoff. You can see it says cutoff frequency CV. How much is this envelope modulating the cutoff, right? And it's going to be 30-40%, right? Quite just under 3/4, let's say, is a nice envelope. You can hear it adds a little bit of punch, a little bit of sharpness. That's generally what filter envelopes do. The more harmonic content there is in the waveform, the more there is to filter envelope, and we'll come back to that now. I'm looking for a pure tone right now, but if I increase the harmonics, you can see the waveform changes, and you can also see that I get a more pronounced sort of jagged, sharp sound on the filter envelope because there are more harmonics to sort of cut in that rapid way. All right, now go back there, open up the filter. this is kind of what we're going to do per voice, and we're going to do that 4 times over for 4 different voices. Now, this is a great setup to learn how to build because it's a model of a subtractive voice. Each subtractive voice that you're ever going to use is going to have a VCA, an envelope for ADSR, a filter, and a filter envelope. So these 5 components, oscillator, VCA, 2 envelopes, and a filter, that's sort of like your go-to subtractive voice in any synthesizer system. Very cool to learn, very useful to learn how to build them. Now I'm going to duplicate this, right? I'm going to duplicate it like 4 times. All right, and let's just see. Now I'm going to have to zoom out, but I'll zoom down as we move. All right, so we can see it very simply, just to review. We've got this oscillator running into a VCA, ADSR opening and closing it. It's getting a trigger from a random gate from the Turing, which again is getting a clock from the overall clock, which is 123 BPM. And maybe slow this down a bit. Slow to 116 BPM. A bit more funky. Okay, cool. Now, same story. The second oscillator is going to come out. It's going to come into the VCA. The VCA is going to come into the filter. All right, and the filter is going to go out to the mixer. So there's the second tone, okay? Again, the envelope is going to open and close, and this envelope is going to modulate the filter, and both envelopes are going to get their trigger from another random gate. So let's have that over there, and same thing is going to do the filter. Okay, so now you can see we've got 2 voices and 2 VCAs, which are sort of not randomly opening and closing, but opening and closing every time they get a trigger from the Turing machine, which is sending out random voltages, random gate times, not entirely repetitive, not entirely predictable. Okay, cool. And again, I can, if I turn the Turing machine to the right, I can actually lock the Turing machine, which is pretty awesome as well. Okay, it's just all like that, and you can see everything. Okay, so I've duplicated that setup on the second voice, and now we're going to have the same routing on the third voice, okay, which is the oscillator goes out to the VCA. The VCA comes in to the filter, and the filter comes out to the mixer. All right, there's my constant tone. Let's just make everything the same level. Now, once again, this envelope is going to open up the VCA, and this envelope is going to get a trigger from another random gate on the Turing machine. So let's make it that one. Okay, and I'm also going to duplicate that gate, and it's also going to trigger the second envelope, which is going to modulate the filter. So it's going to be a filter envelope. Okay, cool. Now we've got 3 voices which are opening in random times. And finally, I'm going to do that with a 4th voice. Okay, so the oscillator is going to come out into the VCA. The VCA is going to come into the filter, going to come into the mixer. There's my constant tone again. And I'm going to take a random output from the Turing machine. I'm going to have it trigger this envelope, and the envelope is going to open that VCA up. All right. Hey, come on. Okay. And again, I'm going to duplicate that for a second envelope, which is going to modulate the cutoff CV. Okay. Excellent. You can actually see how cool it looks now. I'm going to scroll down. Let's try to get all 4 of them, and I'm going to have to zoom out a little. I think that's about as good as we're going to get. So you can see all 4 voices there. All right, running very, very simple configuration, which is just oscillator into a VCA, an envelope's triggering it, it goes into a filter, and there's a duplicate of the gate for the filter, and each one of these is getting its gate information from the Turing, which again produces random gates. Now I've got it locked to the right, the Turing machine, so it's kind of fixed, and if I open it up to the middle, it's going to start introducing random voltages again, so the timing is going to change. All right, so I'm going to leave it until it finds a nice pattern just on the timing. Oh, that is great. That is super sexy. All right, guys, so now the moment that we've all been waiting for, now it's time to add pitch into the system. So looking at it, I think I'm going to put the pitch over here. This is going to be mega easy. I'm going to do a MIDI to CV because I want to play, all right? And I'm going to take it, I'm going to set it up to get from the MIDI log. I'm going to right click and I'm going to change the polyphony channels to 4, all right? Because I've got 4 oscillators and I'm going to play 4-note chords. All right, then I'm going to use the split module. Now what this does, it's very cool, is it takes a polyphonic signal in, right? And it outputs it, it splits it into 4 individual channels. You can actually see over here that my polyphony count is 4. If you can see, I'm very zoomed in. All right, now I'm going to output, so I'm going to play a 4-note chord on the keyboard. It's going to split each note into a separate mono pitch. And I'm going to output the first pitch to the first oscillator, second to the second oscillator, and so forth. All right, now get ready for some magic. So let me just make sure that this is working. Okay, so now, if this works, I'm going to play a 4-note chord, and it's going to distribute the notes to each oscillator. Okay, that did not work, so it must be the other oscillator. There we go. How pretty is that? Okay, see what's happened is that again, got the Turing, I found a random gate time that's working just on that axis of timing, okay? And you can see the VCS are sort of firing and pumping for each individual voice. But now I'm playing a 4-note chord, and how cool does that sound? Because it's taking each note, and it's like I'm playing a very complex rhythmic phrase. Now, it doesn't work for every chord, it's pretty imperfect, but that's also kind of the beauty of it. I'm just gonna go through and play some chords here. Very nice, because I think there's some swing on this. Yeah, there's a little bit you can hear that there's like 10% of swing on this, which I really like. Okay, really like the swing. Very, very cool. Now, yeah, just like ideas. Firstly, of course, we can just keep playing chords, and we can open up the Turing machine for different gate times, right? If you play slightly weirder stuff, you get slightly weirder results. So yeah, I've got like a sort of stranger voicing. And there's a sort of more conventional chord voicing. Really, really cool. By the way, the progression is sort of C minor, and then we've got A flat major, and then F major, G minor, and then maybe let's modulate, which you could do here as well, G minor, A sharp major, D major, C major, sort of end there. So just gives you an idea. Again, like if you want to sit with a modulation and try some fancy chord progressions, these kind of gate animations can be really cool. Let's go back to the first chord. Okay, now I can introduce some random timing again on the Turing. Okay, when I hear something I really like, I'm going to lock it. Kind of like that. Right now, again, the envelopes right now are very long, okay? So one option is just to cut the release on each amp envelope, okay? That'd be one thing to do. You can hear we get sort of a more staccato sort of sound, okay? Now, I'm gonna make a trigger sequencer, all right? Just to give this a little bit of context. And I'm gonna clock, where's he, this guy? Let's put him there. Let's move a little bit there, and a little bit there. All right, so I'm actually gonna put him here. All right, and I'm gonna clock him just off the generic clock, and let's put like a sort of breakbeat kick drum. So I'm gonna load another Platch. Platch is such a cool oscillator because it's so CPU efficient. All right, so let's turn this into the third from last of the red modes. That's the kick mode. All right, and let's output the trigger over here and output it into the really like it. Right, let's get a snare drum in there. So I think that'll be this mode, right? I think that's the snare drum. I'm just gonna put one trigger there, that on. There we go. Right. And here we go with the snare. Uh-huh. All right, now. Just want to get a little bit more involved in the. That's kind of where it's playing. That's where it's the snare drum wants to be. I know it's a little bit off, but I'm feeling that. Oh, gorgeous. All right, really, really, really feeling that. Okay, now again. All right, so just a little something funky, just something a little bit different, a little bit cool, something that can really help you animate. Now imagine if you had 10 oscillators, each with different. The thing is you can also have different, for example, release settings just on one envelope. Let's do the highest one, a little bit longer. See that long note is sort of like a sustain on one of the notes. All right, so last thing before we call it, because I think this is awesome, and again, like the beauty of these patches is often in their simplicity. I don't want to get too complicated. All right, so just take that down and move this down to like a. There we go. That's kind of what I was looking for. It's like jazzy, sine wavy, really simple, really cool. All right, now. If I wanted to make this 1 degree more complicated, and I actually don't recommend doing this, so let me just say before I do this that it may just suck, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of harmonics to each oscillator. And the problem with that is it's going to sort of adjust the perceptual pitch, but it does make a sort of richer sound. And what that means is that when you use the filter envelope now, you can get a much more interesting sound. Okay, now that is kind of cool. That is kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. It needs a little bit of reverb. It needs a little bit of reverb. So let's just put that on. All right, so that is a sort of semi-generative patch because again, now that the gates are locked, but let's introduce random gates. Okay, now it's got my chord information. The last chord that I played is still running. Just keeps on changing those gates, which is really cool. Oh! All right, guys, so, oh, I love that little, I think that's got the Dorian 6 in. So that's it, guys. Remember, whatever chord you play, it'll play. So if you want to modulate, you can do that. If you want to use Phrygian, you can do that. If you want to use Dorian chords, you can do that. You can do almost anything. The point is building the system for subtractive oscillators, each with an ADSR and a filter envelope, and they sort of respond to your playing. Now, if you're one of my Patreons, I will put the patch for this up on Patreon. It'll be yours for free. If you're not, you should probably join me on Patreon if you're into synthesizers and that sort of thing. And I'm also going to upload the patch from earlier in today's live stream, the more sort of banging techno, melodic techno patch, which I really liked. Probably going to make that into a track. Now, there is potentially another version of this patch where the chord information itself is also generative. In this case, it's semi-generative because I'm still playing the musical information and it's only the timing that is quote unquote generative or being sort of influenced by the Turing machine in a random way. But I could make a B version of this patch where the musical information itself is generative, and you could even just set the key and say G minor, and it'll just generate chord progressions for you. So if you want to see that, let me know, I guess in the comments, or by letting me know on the Discord, or whatever it is. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson. A note on the tiering for Patreon is going to change. Basically, the people on the lower tiers, which is $1 tier, are going to get access to the class and 1 video a month. And then all this additional content that I'm making is going to be part of the higher tiers of $5 or above. Not to be stingy, it's just you can see how much love and work I'm putting into this. And I really am trying to build a base of dedicated, committed students. And I feel like those who are paying a little bit more probably have a greater likelihood of being just a little bit more, hardcore students. So guys, have a great day. I really enjoyed the patches today, and we'll upload this patch as well to the Patreon with the video. Have fun. If you make something with it, tag me. Adios.